All right, I'd like to start out by saying Barakatah Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem, Dash. Welcome to another life lesson. The name of this one is The Anti-Christians Never Speak About the Coming of the Lord. All right, just bear with me 1 second. All right, and pretty much it's something I was meditating on last night before I went to bed, and I want to just say the water to the elders, Manata Zakba, Yashawamba, and Ariala, because I had left my phone on the door of the Elder Canucks truck last night. He took me to grab a couple of things, and by the time we got back, I grabbed the stuff. I forgot to grab my phone, and without your phone, it's not like brothers have landlines anymore. And even if they did, a lot of those phone numbers you don't really remember because everything is programmed in the phone. So Spirit came upon me to leave a message on a couple of brothers, pages, to see if they can get in touch with some of the elders in Dallas, see if they could get in touch with the Elder Kanak. And, I tried to lay down, but I couldn't sleep because my brain was going a million miles an hour. And then all of a sudden, I hear the bell ringing. Hours later, of course, I hear the bell ringing, and it was the Elder Kanak. So, hey, Barakatah Bashem Shai for that. And Tawada to you elders, man, came through on the clutch. So what I did was I downloaded the WhatsApp, app on my laptop. So now I have that in case that ever happens again, But usually, I grab my phone and, everything. But shit happens. We're human. We fuck up. So, but the water to you brothers, to you elders, But like I said, this was on my mind, something on my mind last night. And pretty much, we speak about these anti-Christians, which are so-called Christians, and how they never go into prophecy. They don't break down prophecy. They don't know prophecy. And another thing they never go into, which is prophecy, is the coming of the Lord. Because pretty much Jake will just have you believe these pastors and preachers and deacons of these churches, they'll have you, and even some Israelites that know that they're Israelites will have you believe that we're just going to be here. We're just doomed to be here until the destruction, or should I say, we're just doomed to be here. Everyone's going to get old, die, and the next generation going to come, and the next generation going to come, and the next generation going to come, and maybe 50 generations in the future, the Lord might come. Now, that's the wrong attitude to have. Matter of fact, let's go real quick to 2 Peter chapter 3. And to water to you brothers, man. Y'all brothers just don't know, man, how grateful I am. 2 Peter chapter 3. You know what? I started the 10th verse. The point is in the 12th verse. It says, but the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night. And this is, they're not talking about this. I don't hear vocab or any of those apologists. Maybe they speak about it, and I don't, because I don't listen to them like that, So maybe they do speak about it, but to my knowledge, I don't hear any anti-Christian, no matter what high level they're on or low level they're on, speaking about the coming of the Lord. Now I don't watch every single video, so maybe some of them do speak about it, but I haven't come across it because if Yahushua said it best, if I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me. A city that's set on a hill cannot be hid. So if the case is that they are speaking about this, where is it? Where are all of these people flocking to you, to receive your message? And on that note, where are we as far as prophecy is concerned in today's, society? What part of the prophecy are we in? How close are we to the Lord coming back? It says, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise. What is that great noise? The missiles. When they start pelting down, upon the earth, on the surface of the earth, or here in America, and rocking the earth back and forth, hearing the screams and the chaotic sounds of the world, when they see this devastation going on, thinking that the whole planet is going to explode and blow up, which is not, because the Lord is going to hold this place together, because the earth, abides forever. The Lord established it as such, and He established it for men to be on the earth. But the current landlords of the earth, the Edomites, so-called white men, beginning with the international banker families, are not very good managers, not very good landlords. They're slumlords of the earth. So the Lord is coming to visit them with this great noise. And the crazy thing about it was so beautiful is that the same technology that the Lord gave them to puff at the nations, to puff at these people, to make them bend to His will, is the same technology that the Lord is going to use to judge him. How about that? That's why He said He set him in slippery places, and it's going to return upon His own head, this mischief. It says, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The elements is just what it's saying, elements, because everything that you see that's tangible, things that you can't see, things that are liquid, these are all made out of elements. So everything on the soils of America, whether it's a home, a mansion, grass, trees, people, buses, trucks, cars, buildings, streets, pavements, whatever, it's going to all be burnt up in an hour. It says, and the earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up, because the works are what? These governmental agencies that have established, their systems, the people that are going about their everyday life, that's going to be stopped once the Lord comes back, because it says that the powers of heaven shall be shaken. It says, therein shall be burnt up. All right, because when the destruction comes, Esau's plans are going to be done. He's not going to be able to set himself back up into power. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, so these are we know that the destruction is coming near. The disciples, before they became apostles, asked the Lord. Matter of fact, let's get that real quick and we'll come right back to this. Let's go to Matthew chapter 24 and verse 3. It says, and as He sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto Him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? So they wanted to know, what signs are you going to, are we to look for before you come back, to destroy this place, to bring an end to this Roman age and the beginning pretty much of the kingdom of Israel. And that's why, when he explained these things, he broke it down to them. He told them what to look for. Then eventually He told them that He was going to be crucified, and then He was going to come back. This is why in the book of Acts, the first chapter, when He rose, and came to the disciples, they asked Him this. It says, Acts 1:6, when they therefore were come together, they asked of Him, saying, Lord, wilt thou at this time restore again the kingdom to Israel? Because they understood when the Lord suffered and came back, that would be the setting up of the kingdom of heaven. But at this time, they didn't understand that, well, what happened to all of these prophecies and the signs that the Lord said would happen? They didn't happen yet. And that's why He said, and He said unto them, it is not for you to know the times or the seasons which the Father hath put in His own power. Because at the end of the day, not even Yahushua knows what time or what day He's coming back. He knows it's close, but he doesn't know what day it is. Just like we know it's close, but we don't know exactly what day. We can't put a day on it. January so-and-so of such and, we can't do that because we don't know. Only the Father knows. But the point is that the disciples wanted to know. The prophets in the past wanted to know. Let's go to 1 Peter. I believe is it 1 Peter? I believe it's 1 Peter, 1:9. Yep, Barakatah al-Bashim al-Shah. Receiving the end of your faith, even the salvation of your souls, because that's what we're waiting for. Because these wacky tacky Christians will tell you that they accepted Jesus in their life, which first of all you don't accept him, and then now they're saved. But you're not saved because receiving the end of your faith, even the salvation of your soul. So in other words, faith is going to come by faith. Salvation is going to come through faith. That's the hope. That's why the Apostle Peter said, give diligence to make that calling and election sure. Yahweh Shah said, he that endureth to the end, the same shall be saved. Because there's going to be a lot of hardships that are going to come. But you have these wolves in sheep clothing that call themselves preachers, pastors, or whatever, that are pushing that away and giving Jake, a false sense of hope. And Jake is leaning upon that and making a league with that. And seeing that Esau's power is strong, they in league and wholeheartedly attached and cleaving to Esau and this demonic world that he presented to them. All right. So it says, of which salvation the prophets have inquired and searched diligently, who prophesied of the grace that should come unto you, searching what manner of time the Spirit of Yahushai, which was in them, did signify when it testified beforehand the sufferings of Yahushai and the glory that should follow. So if that's the case, should we not also be speaking about these things? So why is it that these anti-Christians are not speaking about the coming of the Lord? Because first and foremost, they're blind. And second of all, when the Lord comes back, he's not going to look at them favorable. He's going to look at them, as strange, because the clothing that they have on is strange apparel. This Christianity is strange apparel. Some of you Israelites that know that you're Israelites that say that the MOTB is not the microcia but something else, you have strange apparel on. Some of you Israelites out there that are teaching about there's a such place as hell, you have strange apparel on, and so on and so forth, with many other different, some of you Israelite groups that know that you're Israelites that teach that the nations could be saved, you have strange apparel on, and you're going to get caught up in that. So woe unto you that desire the day of the Lord. To what end is it for you? Because you're teaching falsehoods, and you have no excuse because you have the prophets out here telling you what the deal is, and you're not listening. But that's okay. So this is the point here. I'm sorry, let me jump back to 2 Peter 3. And just bear with me. This thing be acting up sometimes like that. All right. 2 Peter 3:11. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons ought ye to be in all holy conversation and godliness? Yeah, because we're supposed to be speaking about these things. Whether we're having conversations about it amongst ourselves, whether we're doing lessons or whatever or meditating, whatever the case may be. These are things that we're supposed to be speaking about. These are things that we're supposed to be looking forward to. Because the Lord said, when you see these things happening, look up, for your redemption draweth near. So why aren't these anti-Christians speaking about this? Why aren't they speaking about the end of the world? Why are they so concerned with the Israelites? Why are they not out there, telling the world that the Lord is coming? Because they're teaching a false Messiah. They're teaching another Jesus. And I believe, I forgot who said it. One brother said it, one of them videos, that when so-called Jesus was painted up as being a white man, Jake had nothing to say. They embraced that. And damn, I forgot the actress' name, but she played, her name was Florida Evans in the Good Time series. I forgot her name. She, was all for the so-called white Jesus. In the movie Rosewood, she said that the dude was a so-called white man as sure as Jesus' blue eyes. So they never spoke against it. They never had a problem with that. They never had a problem with that image. It wasn't until we started speaking about the Lord being a so-called black man with that woolly afro that they started having a problem with it. That they started, all of a sudden have their rebuttals and this great, oration about them to come and defend their white Jesus. Because at the end of the day, you anti-Christians, you suffer from Stockholm syndrome, from all of you top apologists, pastors, preachers, or whatever, all the way down to the minions in the church. All of you have Stockholm syndrome, because all of you defend the main. Who's the main person you defend? The so-called white men, the Edomites. You're not concerned with the Chinese. You're not concerned with the Japanese. You're not concerned with the Hamites. You're not concerned with the East Indians or the Arabs, saving them. You're only concerned with saving the so-called white men. Same thing with these jakes out in the world that call themselves Christians, or that don't agree that the only people that are going to be delivered are the Israelites, and not even just the Israelites, the elect of the nation of Israel. So what are we to do? Looking for and hasting unto the coming of the day of the Most High, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. So they're not speaking about these things, because to them, when is the last time you heard a so-called Christian speak about prophecy of any sort? Now, if you go among Esau, which some of them are jakes, you're going to hear them speak about, the situations going on over there with Russia and Ukraine and, Israel and Iran, and Turkey and all these different situations happening. How all of these are going to get involved because they're into the scriptures. You so-called Negroes are not. And even you ones that are, that are preachers and pastors, I'm talking about, the so-called apologists, right? You're not speaking about these things, to my knowledge, And if videos come out and say, no, okay, well, hey, fine. But that should be the main thing on the front of your agenda, is teaching of the coming of the Lord and the things that are happening right now in prophecy, because you're not speaking about these things. If anything, you're speaking against one of the major prophecies to happen just before the Lord comes back, which is the MOTB and this whole digital system that's being put up in place. When's the last time you heard a Christian talk about the digital, currencies and digital, the digital infrastructure that's being set up around the world, and how everything is being shifted, from cash and credit cards and debit cards and all that to everything being done online? They ain't talking about this. When's the last time you heard them talking about, these devices that are being implanted and are going to be implanted into people, which is going to usher in the MOTB system? You don't hear them talk about that, Beautiful. Let me read this. Philippians 3:18, for many walk, of whom I have told you often, and now tell you, even weeping, that they are the enemies of the cross of Yahushua. That's right. Whose end is destruction, whose power is their belly, and whose glory is in their shame, who mind earthly things. For our conversation is in heaven, from whence also we look for the Savior, the Lord Yahushua Mashiach. That's right. And when you look up that word conversation, which we learned that from Text Mar, right? That word conversation goes back to the Greek word palituma or something along those lines, and it goes into citizenship. So our citizenship or our conversation is in heaven. That's why the Apostle Paul said that we look to the things that are in heaven, not mind the things that are on earth. I'm just merely paraphrasing. So it says here, 2 Peter 3:12, looking for and hasting unto the coming of the day of the Most High, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. So why aren't they speaking about these things? Because they're looking just to be here, get old here, die here, and their children, and continue on and continue on. Like it says, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. I'm going to come back to that. Let's come here. 2 Peter 3:3, knowing this first, that there shall come in the last day scoffers walking after their own lusts. And that includes these wacky-tacky Christians. And even Israelites that know that they're Israelites. And saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of the creation. So they're not looking for the kingdom of heaven. They're looking to be here. They're snug like a bug in a rug, They're comfortable. Jake is comfortable in all this hell, this bad food, You know, all these medications that Jake is on, all of these illnesses and ailments that Jake has, you know, catching hell with this badass, nasty, demonic diet, you know, and liquor selection. They're comfortable here. They're not looking for anything else. They done settled like that old lion. That's what the Lord said. Who's going to rouse them up? Because the Most High is going to prod Jake and get him out there. And the worst out there is Judah. Why? Because they're the head tribe. They caught it the worst. So the Lord is going to stir them up first, and then get the rest of the tribes to come together. The elder Kanak was telling me about a dream somebody had. I'm not going to go into like detail of who it was or whatever the case may be, but he said that, you know, there was a group of Jakes, right, going against a group of so-called Latinos, and they had these, you know, like they were mad, like they were about to fight, and they came to each other and they got real close, and when they was about to get busy, everybody just started hugging, you know. So that's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. You know, so pretty much, you know, the Lord is showing through these visions, because the scriptures speak about that in the book of, you know, Joel, in the book of Acts, you know, that the Lord would give visions of these things coming. And see what Esau is doing. He's pinning the southern kingdom against the northern kingdom. But it's only going to go so far. Because one thing they forget about and they don't talk about or they don't accept is that the Lord has an election. And the election are not going to be fooled. If it were possible, they would deceive the very elect. But the elect are not going to be bothered by that. Because all through the midst of all this mayhem and confusion, you still see so-called, Southern Kingdom and Northern Kingdom brothers coming together. So-called blacks, so-called Latino, so-called Native American Indian coming together still. Because you can't stop the truth. You can't stop this train. The train that left the station, and it ain't stopping, and it ain't going back. It's only going to go forward. And it's going forward at full speed. It says, for this they willingly are ignorant of, that by the word of the Most High the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water, whereby the world that then was, being overflowed with water, perished. Right, those heavens, those empires that were back, you had great empires back then. Empire is not something new. Empires didn't start with Esau. That's what they'll make you believe. Civilization started with the Greeks. Everything else before that, with all these dark nations, they never accomplished any great things in the world. Bullshit. All of the technology you got, all of the ideas, medicine and all that, you got it from the dark nations. But you don't give credit because you have the controller right now. You know, what did Voltaire, a French philosopher, say? He said, history is the lie commonly agreed upon. So when you took over the planet during the Renaissance, you erased a lot of stuff and you whitewashed it. You put yourself in the forefront of it, like you did all these great things. But you had great civilizations back then, heavens, that were destroyed by the flood. And then when the world was reestablished, you had other great dark civilizations that came up in empires. But today you make the world believe that they were all white. The Canaanites were white. The Egyptians were white. These, you know, because you control the narrative now. But the Lord, as Elder Yashwamba says, the Lord is going to slap the joystick out of your hand. 2 Peter 3:12, looking for and hastening unto the coming of the day of the Most High, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth, wherein dwelleth righteousness. See, that's what we're looking for. New heavens and a new earth, wherein dwelleth righteousness. All right, so going back to 1 Peter, I believe we might be done with that. Yeah, so we're done with that. So let's go to the main precept that I had. This is the scripture that came to mind. I was reading through this earlier. All right, Isaiah 8:9. But a believing remnant. Associate yourselves, O ye people, and you shall be broken in pieces, And give ear, all ye of far countries, gird yourselves, and you shall be broken in pieces. Gird yourselves, and you shall be broken in pieces. Take counsel together, and it shall come to naught. So that's dealing with you Israelites that are taking counsel from your leaders. You know, the leaders of this people cause them to err, and they're giving you wrong counsel. They're giving you false counsel. It says, speak the word, and it shall not stand, because the Lord ain't going to be on your side. This is why every 6 months to a year or 2 years here and there, every 3 to 4 years, Bishop Nathaniel has to keep changing things that he said in the past, because he's not grounded. He's not rooted in Yahushua. So he's like a boat out there in the open sea, without an anchor, without the paddles, just out there, just floating around clouds, that without water. Now is he teaching a lot of the same stuff that was taught at One West back in the past? Of course, and that's beautiful. But you're seeing him stray. And what the scripture said, a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump. So until he comes back and becomes grounded in Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, he's going to keep getting worse. Scripture say they shall wax worse and worse. For the Most High is with us. See, the Lord is with us. And like Elder Apostle's been saying, and other apostles, brothers out there, elders, we've never changed our stance on anything that we taught. We've been teaching the same thing, during the YouTube era, before the YouTube era, and we never changed it. But Bishop Nathaniel, on the other hand, he's been changing things. Talking about, that Cornelius is an Edomite. We got kicked out of the main school, not the main school, the House of David for that. But then, conveniently enough, he's teaching it. Never apologize. He blatantly, you've seen it, he's worse than Esau. Plausible deniability. He's worse than Esau. Here it is, the recording, the video stated the man, the older gentleman, the older Benjamite gentleman, specifically asked the question to make sure that he understood what he was saying. Are you sure there's not going to be another time where the Israelites, or we as a people, are going to go through the things that we went through in slavery? Something worse than that. And he said, no, everything's going to be hunky-dory, and then the destruction is going to come. Blatantly said that. But if you listen closely, moron, you hear that it said it was nothing happening at that time. No, you did not. Just like right now, the IUIC is, and they're using Bishop Nathaniel and Deacon Malachi to spin the narrative of we've always been talking about this digital system and how they're gonna, you're gonna have to buy and sell, by getting involved. And you're gonna see how they're gonna spin it to where eventually they're gonna say the micro C-hip is the mark of the beast. And I said that a couple of years back. I said, I'm interested to know how the IUIC is going to spin the narrative like they did the time of Jacob's trouble to see, how they're going to spin the narrative to say that they've always been saying that the micro C-hip is the MOTB. And lo and behold, little here, little there, a little spin this way, a little wiggle that way, a little weaving here, a little weaving over there. And you'll see in the whole picture coming together that they're pretty much letting everyone know that the MOTB system, or the MOTB, is this digital system that's out here. And they're still spinning and wiggling and rolling and weaving. That's why the old saying, oh, what a tangled web we weave, when at first we practice to deceive. So it says, for the Most High is with us. For the Lord, Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, spake thus to me with a strong hand, and instructed me that I should not walk in the way of this people. Saying, so we're not to walk in the way of these anti-Christians, and even in these other Israelite groups that are not following the correct way. Because as the scripture the brother put on earlier in Philippians 3, that they serve their own belly. They're the enemies of the cross of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. Say ye not a confederacy, and this is what Jake has. They have a confederacy, a tying together, a unity, a union with Esau and the other nations. And they've done it over and over again. whatever nation was in power, you had certain Israelites that just flocked to them for help. The one king, I forgot what his name was. I don't know if it was Ahaz, Haziah, one of them. That he got sick. And then he consulted the was it Baal something, one of them gods. He consulted to see if he would get healed, and the Lord sent the prophet to curse his ass out, because he didn't go to the Most High Yahweh Bashem El Shai. He went to the other nation, to their gods. So Jake, whatever nation was ever in power, you always had sambos that were in league. No, it wasn't Hezekiah. It wasn't Hezekiah. Now Hezekiah was sick unto death, but he turned, when Isaiah told him he was going to die, he turned to the wall and cried, and the Lord extended his life. It was another one. It started with an A. I don't know if it was Amaziah, Ahaz, or one of them. Says, say ye not a confederacy to them whom this people shall say a confederacy, neither fear ye their fear, nor be afraid. Right. So it says, sanctify Yahweh Bashem El Shai of hosts himself, and let him be your fear, and let him be your dread. Right. Because when you fear the Lord Yahweh Bashem El Shai and reverence those names and call upon those names, and do what the Lord said to the best of your ability, then we'll be protected. And he shall be for a sanctuary and for a stone of stumbling. So to the one, he's going to be a sanctuary, a place of refuge. But for a stone of stumbling and for a rock of offense to both the houses of Israel. So to the others that are not a part of the elect of the nation of Israel, he's going to be a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense. Because when Yahweh Shai was established before the foundation of the earth, this is what was said about him. That he was going to be that stumbling stone. He was going to be the chief cornerstone that was going to be rejected. And if you reject the chief, Isaiah, I think it might be one of those. But the water, brother, the water. He was set up to be the chief cornerstone. So those that reject him, guess what? They're not being built properly. All others and Ahaziah fell down through the lattice in his upper chamber that was in Samaria. Yep. So it's Ahaziah. 2 Kings 1 and 2, and was sick, and he sent messengers and said unto them, go inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, whether I shall recover of this disease. See? So the Lord killed him because he didn't look to the Lord. But the angel of the Lord said to Elijah the Tishbite, arise, go up to meet the messengers of the king of Samaria, and say unto them, it is not because there is not a God in Israel that you go to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron. Yeah, man, Jake. And even Amaziah, he was throwing Esau off the cliffs and seeing them explode at the bottom, destroyed them, right? And what happened? Afterward, he went and worshiped their god, Quaz. Just to show you, Jake is simple. So it says, for a gin and for a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. So the whole nation is going to be, jacked up. Because if you reject the chief cornerstone, your foundation is never sure. Whenever you reject the chief cornerstone and build on another foundation, what you're doing is you're setting up a building for failure. Because that untempered mortar is not going to hold the building together. Yeah, it may look nice. You may build pretty high, but eventually it's going to come down. And how great is that fall going to be? It says, and many among them shall stumble. Why? Because the road to the salvation, to the truth, is a very narrow, straight path. And this is why you have a lot of people, a lot of Jakes in Christianity and in whatever other group, whether it's Roman Catholicism or Pentecostal, whatever denomination. And then you have big, large Israelite groups that Jake flocks to for their lifestyles, like the IURC, because they give off the vibe they give a worldly vibe, just like the Christian church at one time was dead. But then how did they revive it? By putting concerts up in there, like R&B concerts. It's no different than what goes on in the world. So worldview Christianity is nothing more than secular, worship, because it is a worship, but it's a secular worship. This matter of fact, let me get that real quick. This is the book of James, chapter 3, and verse 15. This wisdom descendeth not from above, but is earthly, sensual, devilish. Yeah. So what they're doing is earthly, sensual, devilish in these churches. So it says, Isaiah 8:15, and many among them shall stumble and fall and be broken and be snared and be taken. Why? Because they're trusting in the power of Esau in today's terms. Just like they did among the Greeks, just like some of them did among the Romans, just like some of them did with the Egyptians, the Syrians, so on and so forth. And that was to their destruction. Bind up the testimony, seal the law among my disciples. Why? Because you have an election that are going to be sealed, that are going to be protected from these things. They're going to be protected from the wolves. They're going to be protected from harm. They're going to be protected from famine. They're going to be protected from wild beasts. It says, and I will wait upon Yahweh Bashem Yahushai that hideth his face from the house of Jacob. Right. And that's why Jacob is in such a destitute state, because the Lord is hiding his face from them. Why? Because they're strange. They're a degenerate plant, especially now. It's 2025. Come on. These Jakes today are unrecognizable. I mean, Jake was fucked up, going back to the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Yeah. But you had more of a, there was more of a warmth there, more like of a connection, a brotherly connection, a sisterly connection back then. Jake had more love for each other. But throughout the decades, Esau has been working on setting, the setting Jake against Jake, pretty much. Slowly but surely, through the music, through through television, and through a variety of other things, they've systematically, and then Sambos that go out there and start shit, because they're getting money, and this is why you have that psychopathic, rage going on in Jake communities, to where when they see each other, they go crazy. They go wild like animals in a cage. Because Esau set that up, because the Lord allowed him to set it up, because the Lord is going to destroy 2/3 of Israel here in America. It says, and I will look for him. It says, behold, I and the children whom the Lord hath given me are for signs and for wonders in Israel from the Lord of hosts, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. So we are for signs and for signs and for wonders. Let's go real quick to the book of 1 Corinthians 4:9. For I think that the Most High has set forth us, the apostles, last, as it were appointed to death. For we are made a spectacle unto the world, and to angels, and to men. And this is why we're supposed to be out there on the forefront, on the streets, because when you look up this word spectacle, it goes into the word theater. See? Theatron. It says a theater, a place in which games and dramatic spectacles are exhibited, and public assemblies held. For the Greek used the theater also as a forum, a public show. Metaphorically, a man who is exhibited to be gazed at and made sport of, right? And that's pretty much what happens. This is why we go out there. We make ourselves, how does that go? Offended for a word. I know it's in Isaiah. Did I get it right? Nope. and then we'll come back. Isaiah 29:21. That make a let me go. Let me open that up. Yeah, Isaiah 29:21. That make a man an offender for a word, and lay a snare for him that reproveth in the gate, and turn aside the just for a thing of naught. Yeah, because that's what they do. You know, and some of these guys are paid to do these things. You know. Let's see. Let's go to right quick. We'll come back to that. Micah 3. Right. Micah 3 and 5. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh Bashem El Shai concerning the prophets that make my people err. That's all these false prophets, whether they know they're Israelites or not, that bite with their teeth and cry peace, and he that putteth not into their mouths, meaning if you don't go along with them, they even prepare war against them. And that's why you have these wacky tacky Christians coming against the Israelites now. You know, and that foolishness that the IUIC is doing is just foolish. You know, you still continuing on going and harassing these people that don't want to be bothered. You obviously are not following the scriptures. You're doing the same thing Vocab is doing, just harassing people for no good reason. You know, and like the elder pastor said, you know, you have no fruits that's coming out of these churches for doing that. If anything, you're just giving them more ammunition to talk shit about us. But so be it. So Isaiah 29:21, that make a man an offender for a word, and lay a snare for him that reproveth in the gate, and turn aside the just for a thing of no. Yeah, because you don't like reproof. So going back to Isaiah 8 and 18, behold, I and the children whom the Lord hath given me are for signs and for wonders in Israel from the Lord Yahweh Bashem El Shai of hosts, which dwelleth in Mount Zion. And when they shall say unto you, seek ye unto them that have familiar spirits, and unto wizards that peep and that mutter, right? Because that's what your preachers and pastors are. You know, they're nothing but wizards, warlocks, those that seek familiar spirits. You know, they're nothing but witches and warlocks, whether they know it or not. Some of them know what they're doing, and some of them don't. Nevertheless, they still being used by Satan. It says, should not a people seek unto their power for the living to the dead? So whatever we do or whatever we seeking for or asking for, we ask the Lord, Yahweh Bashem El Shai. Not these, you know, these demons. See? Matter of fact, I'm going to come back to this. Go to Isaiah 28 and 14. It says there, Judah was warned. Wherefore hear the word of the Lord, ye scornful men, that rule this people which is in Jerusalem. Remember, the Lord always has a problem with the rulers. The Lord got a problem with this world, but who is he coming to visit? The rulers and their armies. So with Jake, the Lord got a beef with the ruler. Yeah, he got a beef with the congregation, with the peoples, but he got a beef with you false prophets. He got a beef with you false leaders. Because you have said we have made a covenant with death. Yeah, and some of you, you know, you are not going to come out of that Christian mind state. You're locked in that Christian. You made a covenant with death. You know, it says, and with hell are we at agreement. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, when Jacob's trouble comes and all hell breaks loose, it shall not come unto us. You're thinking that it's not going to touch you. For we have made lies our refuge. Yeah, because you think that because you made a league with Esau, Esau is going to be an honorable man and he's going to uphold, you know, his part of the bargain. You are sadly mistaken. That's why it says never trust thine enemy. And under falsehood have we hid ourselves, right? So if you hide yourself under falsehood, guess what? That falsehood is nothing but untempered mortar. That falsehood is a fleeting moment. You know, it's a facade, a mirage. It's there. It seems like you're safe, but then all of a sudden it just disappears. Therefore, thus saith the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, behold, I lay in Zion for a foundation, a stone. This is Yahweh Shai, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone, a sure foundation, He that believeth on him shall not make haste. Yeah. So you're going to be safe. If we make Yahweh Bashem El Shai our foundation, we're going to be safe. If we be part of the elect, of course. It says, judgment also will I lay to the lion, and righteousness to the plummet, and the hail shall sweep the refuge of lies. And that's what we see right now. We see the hail sweeping the refuge of lies, which is the truth coming out. It's these prophecies playing out and sweeping, the BS that's been taught by these other camps. The BS that's been taught by these wacky-tacky Christians. And the waters shall overflow the hiding place. See? So all of this BS that you got going on, all of these strongholds that you leaned upon, that you been looking to for security, for a place of shelter, the Lord's going to sweep all that away. And the waters shall overflow the hiding place. Because at that day, the scripture says, then shall be known who are my chosen. And your covenant with death shall be disannulled, and your agreement with hell shall not stand. Why? Because all of these things that the Lord says is going to come upon you. Jacob's trouble is going to take all of you out, all of you Christians out there that are not a part of the elect, that do not come to the knowledge and wisdom and understanding of Yahweh Bashem El Shai and the true doctrine. You're going to be caught out there when all hell breaks loose. You're going to be caught out there in the time of Jacob's trouble. When the scriptures say, they shall be as madmen, sparing none. It says, when the overflowing scourge shall pass through, then you shall be trodden down by it. So you're not going to be protected because you're not abiding in the secret place of the Most High. You don't know his name. You don't know that his name is Yahweh. You don't know that his son's name is Yahweh Shai. You don't call upon those names. You scoff at those names. You mock at those names. You don't believe in those names. So guess what? When the time comes, you're not going to be protected. From the time that it goeth forth, it shall take you. For morning by morning shall it pass over, right? Because you're going to be like day after day, during the midst of all this hell, day after day, you're going to be through. It says by day and by night, and it shall be a vexation only to understand the report, because you're not going to understand why it's happening. Knowledge and wisdom shall be the stability of thy times and strength of salvation. You're not going to understand what's happening because you were not taught the right way. You were not warned that these things were coming. The trumpet was not blown in the congregation that you're from by your leaders. They didn't tell you what was happening, what was coming. They didn't tell you how to be protected. They didn't tell you, they didn't give you the necessary provision. They didn't give you the hedge to stand in the day when the Lord brings this hell, upon Jacob. For the bed is shorter than a man can stretch himself on it. Yeah, because you can lay down the bed, but if you're longer than the bed, it's going to be uncomfortable. And the covering narrower than that he can wrap himself in it, right? So you might be cold, but you can only wrap the top or the bottom. You can't wrap both. So you know how it is when you're cold or you're too hot, you can't sleep. So you're going to be uncomfortable in these times. It says, for the Lord shall rise up as in Mount Perazim, he shall be wroth as in the valley of Gibeon, that he may do his work, his strange work, and bring to pass his act, his strange act. Yeah, because that's how the Lord is going to deliver, the Israelites, the elect, by the chariot of Yahushai and the chariots of the angels that are going to be up there. It says, now therefore, and the angels are going to be gathering the elect from the four corners of the earth. Yahushua is going to pull up here, on America and beam up his elect. Now therefore be ye not mockers, lest your bands be made strong. For I have heard from the Lord, power of hosts, a consumption even determined upon the whole earth. Because this situation that we have going on right now, prophecies, and the things that are happening is going to be a worldwide event. This is why it's taken so long, because every facet of the world that has a functioning, government, that has a functioning economic system that is on the grid, is all being prepped to go digital. to be able to take total control over the whole planet Earth and all of the resources and the monies and everything that come in and that go out. Give ear and hear my voice, hearken and hear my speech. Doth the plowman plow all day to sow? Doth the open break the clods of his ground? When he hath made plain the face thereof, does he not cast abroad the fitches, and scatter the cumin, and cast in the principal wheat, and the appointed barley, and the rye in their place? Right, because he was directed by the Lord. For the Most High, for his power doth instruct him to discretion, and doth teach him, right, and he follows the instructions on how to cultivate everything so he can get the benefit of those crops when they grow. For the fitches are not threshed with a threshing instrument, neither is a cart wheel turned about upon the cumin, but the fitches are beaten out with a staff, and the cumin with a rod. Right, so there's a particular way to do these things to get the maximum benefit from them. So there's a specific way that we're supposed to, worship Yahweh Bashem Yahushua. He's very particular. Bread corn is bruised, because he will not ever be threshing it, nor break it with the wheel of his cart, nor bruise it with his horsemen. This also cometh from the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushua of hosts, which is wonderful in counsel and excellent in working. Right, and the elect will be brought out of this mess. So Isaiah 8:20, to the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. And that's the bottom line. Because Yahushua is not shining in them. And they're an enemy to Yahushua's cross. And they shall pass through it hardly, be stead and hungry, right? Because when the time of Jacob's trouble comes, you're going to be in a bad case. And it shall come to pass, when they shall be hungry, they shall fret themselves, right? You're going to be worried. You're going to be troubled. And curse their king, which is your leaders, the governmental leaders also, and their power, and look upward. Like, Lord, help it. Jesus, please, oh Lord, please help it. And they shall look unto the earth, and behold trouble and darkness, dimness of anguish, and they shall be driven to darkness. Yeah, because you didn't make the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushua your refuge. You scoffed at him, you mocked him, and guess what? When the time comes for your calamities to come upon you, he's going to mock you. All right? So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. To the next time I say, Shalom. And the water to you brothers for the precepts.